What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Fight Club podcast. This is episode 6. Let me see what the date is. The date is January 30th, 2025. Got myself a cool little setup here. I got a Samsung Q2U microphone. Just trying to upgrade my setup a little bit, trying to give you guys a little bit more of a professional look. I had an issue last time with my pods here. I think this side here wasn't working really well, so when I was listening to it after I had recorded, I couldn't hear anything out of this speaker on this side. So I apologize for that. I'm working on it. I mean, these are things that I think we kind of figure out as we go, right? So anyway, welcome back, guys. I appreciate you. I was gonna get it scheduled today with Raul to come back on, my brother, but man, it's been tough. He's in California, stuff comes up, so I'm just gonna go ahead and roll today and kind of let it go, and we'll talk about a couple things, right? So first thing on the list here, I have a bunch of stuff written that I want to talk about. One thing is the GFL. So the GFL happened last week. The draft was last Friday. It seemed interesting. It seemed something different. After that it happened, I was watching, because I watch a lot of like Luke Thomas. I watched the Morning Combat, then I watched like Luke Thomas's channel, and I watched Brian Campbell's channel. I watched Ariel. I watched a bunch of different podcast people, especially people who are like professionals, and people who are really like knowledge, or I guess not knowledge. They're knowledgeable about MMA and just fighting in general, and they were kind of shitting on the GFL. Really saying that apparently, I didn't know this, but a lot of people that they said that they had signed came out and posted on Twitter and everything that they hadn't been signed. Some of them are actually signed already. They're in a contract, an active contract with a different fight organization. And from what I saw, I think there was one person, sounds crazy, but one person that was actually, he's in jail in like Europe or Russia or something. I don't know. But he's like in jail with like a 7-year sentence. And so how can he fight? Just really, really crazy. But interesting enough, I'm still gonna watch it just because I want to see what is gonna happen and see what it's all about. I'm still semi-interested about it, right? So I kind of took a couple little pictures here because I don't think that anybody really knows much about how the point system goes. And so this is what I have for the point system. So you're gonna have 4 points for a finish, 3 points for a decision win, 2 points for a draw, 1 point for a decision loss, and then 0 points if you get knocked out. So that's how everything's going to go. And then as you go through, I guess, the season or whatever it is, at the very end, whoever has the most points, that team wins. They have a lot of, big name fighters on there. I guess big name fighters that are pretty much out of their heyday, right? They're on the back nine of their careers, and we're probably waiting to be, cut. So you look at like Tony Ferguson, you have Shogun on there, Junior Dos Santos. I mean, you have just a bunch of these, the older folk, I call them silverbacks, because the silver hair. So you got a bunch of silverbacks, right? That are still probably action-packed. They're still going to throw down. It's, should be interesting to watch, right? So anyway, that's where we are. I mean, Tony Ferguson signed, and that's an interesting one to watch. I mean, bro doesn't quit, man. He just wants to fight forever. And at some point, Father Time's going to just knock you over the head with a sledgehammer and say, it's time, buddy. So anyway, so that's that. I did want to talk about, well, first of all, I wanted to talk about what I talked about last week. And last week, I said, well, my goal was going to be to start watching more MMA and start watching different organizations, because I pretty much strictly stick to the UFC, at least in the years past. And so I wanted to do something different. And so, there was no UFC last week. So I decided, you know what, let me just watch PFL, right? It was a little bit of a slower day at work, and the main card started at 3 because it was in Abu Dhabi. Or Dubai, I'm sorry. And it might be the same thing, I don't know, but it was in Dubai. And so I watched the main card, and I was entertained, man. It was good fights. Obviously the main card the main event was like the best fight. It was Usman Nurmagomedov against Paul Hughes. So it was very much this, I think the the theme of the night was Dagestan versus Ireland, right? I think there was 3 matches that were those nationalities against each other. I believe, I got to look back, but I believe Dagestan won 3-0. I mean, they won every single match that they had against Ireland. But that main fight was a fantastic fight. I mean, Usman came out with those kicks. He was just flipping them up. He was working on that front leg a lot. Paul Hughes got in, and it was interesting because Paul Hughes was pulling away. You know, in the middle, I guess probably third, fourth, fifth round, he was really just kind of digging in, but it was the body blows, right? And it was weird because Usman was actually helping Paul Hughes in the sense where he would do the tie clinch and he was trying to throw knees, but I think just how strong Paul was, he scooted back and he just dug. I mean, he just dug into the midsection of Usman, and he did work, man. And I think it tired Usman out. It made him real, kind of a little more wary to throw, and he got exhausted. Now, there was a lot of people saying that it didn't make sense. It should have been a draw, which I can see that as well, because the third round there was a point taken away. Now, I will say this. There was a lot of fouls both directions, but I think that the foul that caused the point to be taken away wasn't really like a blatant foul. It was a foul where I can't remember what happened exactly, but it was some sort of, they caught their legs together and Hughes spun, and at the same time he spun, Usman kicked to go a leg kick, and he just happened to hit him in the nuts. And because of that, because there was previous low blows, they took a point away, and that was the difference maker. That was, so if that didn't happen, then there would be no issue with, saying that Usman won it, people saying that it was a draw. It would have been a little bit more obvious, but, it's the fight game. That's what happens. The refs are going to do what they have to do and get in there. So I thought it was a fantastic fight, right? So this ended probably about close to 5:00 Eastern time where I'm at. And so I we worked. I worked my dinner service at the restaurant. And I got home and I was kind of chilling. And I was like kind of just looking through social media, and I saw, what, BKFC is on right now. So I put BKFC on, and I think I saw 3 fights, maybe 4 fights. My God, I've never watched BKFC. I think I don't know. I have this kind of thing where I was kind of worried about people, especially when they're fighting just bare knuckle, because I don't know. I don't like people getting just like smashed like that. Like I'm okay with like a little bit of a glove, which is weird. But anyway, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of knockouts, obviously, because it's just knuckle to face. And they're fantastic fights, man. That last fight, the Eddie Alvarez and Jeremy Stephens fight, was fantastic. It was very much like a back and forth. I thought Eddie was going to pull it out in the very beginning, and then Jeremy was just put it on him, dude. He broke his jaw. He broke Eddie Alvarez's jaw. And I think kudos to Eddie, because he tried to continue and persevere and get through it. And then just, he couldn't withstand it, right? And then eventually, I think he stood up and he said, like, I'm done, whatever. But really, the corner called it. But it was good. It was a good fight. And so it's crazy because I thought to myself, man, I'm missing all these fights. Like, I'm watching only UFC. I'm not watching any of these other things, any of these other organizations. I was like, damn, that's crazy. So, after Saturday, which is when those fights happened, like Sunday, Monday came, Tuesday came, and I'm watching like Lou Thomas, Morning Combat, all this stuff. And they're saying that the PFL fight was the best, that main fight was the best fight that they've ever had, Bellator or PFL. And I thought, wow, damn, I'm just lucky enough to where the first one I actually took time to watch was the best one that they've ever put on. And so hopefully this is a stepping stone, and they can start building up and doing more, and kind of jumping off of what they've been doing, because it's fantastic. The only gripe I have with PFL is it looks a little cheesy, because I think the gloves, the red gloves and blue gloves, UFC has just black gloves. So I think that just having a unified color of gloves, I think that looks better. I think it looks more professional. Also, this may be stupid, but the thing that bothers me is that when the fighters are coming in to start the round, they have this aerial view pointing straight down of the fighters coming together, and they kind of hold that too long. The UFC will hold that with them coming together, and then if you notice, they'll switch to a side view so you can actually see the action. And what the PFL does is they kind of stick there too long. So what you do is you see a lot of people, kicking, punching, maybe shooting for a takedown, but you don't get a good view of the whole, the whole idea of what's happening, because you're looking at it kind of at a 45-degree angle. So that's my only gripe. There's it's production issues is really what it is. So but I think that there's a lot of upside to PFL. Hopefully they can get some more traction, they can get some good fights. I think that this rivalry, if you will, against Paul Hughes and Usman, I think this is going to be a good rivalry. I think they'll get a lot from it. But yeah, so it was great. And then BKFC, I'm gonna start watching it all the time. These guys crack, and I like it. This is the same reason why last week I was talking about the heavyweight fights that I like so much. It's because it's so tense, because every throw that you throw, every punch that you throw could be you knocking somebody out, but you have that small chance also of somebody else countering you and knocking you out. So just every move has to be precise. There's no room for error. There's no cushion, none of that. You just you got to do it, right? And it's crazy because you must have guts to go in there and throw those fists and just hit, and with the danger of being hit. It's pretty cool, man. So I give those guys massive props. Actually, anybody that does combat sports, massive props, but that in particular, because it's pretty crazy, right? So jumping off of that, we saw also, it's kind of ridiculous. We saw also Conor McGregor come in and kind of face off with Jeremy Stevens, saying, hey, Conor was saying, make the fight, schedule it, whatever. Not really realizing that whatever reason he's still under contract with the UFC, Dana White's going to ever let that happen, which is ridiculous because he's never going to let that happen. I don't even know if we see Conor McGregor ever fight again, to be quite honest with you. He's done all this crazy stuff, and I think that as fight fans, you can let a certain amount of things slide, whether it comes to, DUIs or beating up old men inside of the bar, or, allegations and all this stuff. People will tend to let that fly if you're fighting, right? If you're fighting. And for a while, he was very much I want to fight, I want to do all this. And so people were like, all right, cool, yeah, that's fine. And he's doing all this crazy stuff because he's going to fight. Well, it's been so long that, that we're like, he's not going to fight anymore. I don't think he's going to fight anymore. So it's just crazy that he's still doing all this stuff, right? And the Michael Chandler thing, it's what also is nuts is if you go back and you think about fights back when Kevin Holland, remember when if he was fighting and he hurt his rib, I think he separated his rib, and so he couldn't fight anymore. I think he quit on the stool or something like that, but they called it. He couldn't fight. Well, Conor came after and he was talking crap, saying, yeah, I would have just gone. I would have still fought, all this stuff. But then he pulls out from Michael Chandler fight with a little toe issue. That's ridiculous. Right? I don't care how much the toe issue is, but okay, this is the thing. Maybe it is a lot, and maybe it does make a huge difference. I don't know. I'm not in that scenario or in that situation. But don't talk shit about somebody else for pulling out for an issue when you're going to pull out for an issue also, because you don't know either, right? So Conor McGregor, just ridiculous, right? And there was also, I'm going to pull it up right here on my phone, but there was also, I think after the fact for the whole Conor and Hughes kind of situation, because they were talking about how Usman was backed up by Khabib, right? And they were talking about how Paul Hughes could be backed up by Conor McGregor, because that's just the beefs that they've had, right? And so people were talking bad because they were saying that, Conor should have been in his corner, which I get and I don't, right? I get it's a storyline and all this stuff, but it just doesn't make any sense. But, Paul Hughes is doing a lot for the Irish community and the Irish fan base when it comes to MMA. And so, after that fight, I think they were embracing Hughes and Nurmagomedov were embracing. He was like, bro, the media was making it to seem like we were rivals. He goes, I got nothing but respect for you. Kind of all this stuff, right? Even Khabib invited Paul Hughes to come to Dagestan to train with them, which is pretty dope. And I think Hughes actually said, yeah, I'm down to do that after we're done with our fights. After we're done doing what we need to do, I'm down to take you up on that. And also, I would love for you to come to Ireland to train with us, right? Well, Conor tweets, he said, get that flag off, you little know what you are, see, hashtag NT from up there. And then Paul Hughes responded with, at the Notorious MMA, always said you were the GOAT, paid homage at every opportunity, but coming at my Irish identity just shows where your head is at, right? These were tweeted by both of them. And so it's crazy because I think that I've heard from people that the Irish community doesn't really back up Conor McGregor, because I don't think that he's done a good service to them. He hasn't represented them well recently. And again, goes back to that, you're not fighting, so we're not going to deal with your stuff. So Paul Hughes is the guy. I think he's going to take the mantle. He's going to move up, right? Hopefully he gets after it and he moves on to the UFC and he does big things. I would love for him to move to the UFC and be a champion. That'd be dope. He's a really good fighter, and honestly, he's 27. So this is the thing. A lot of people are talking about how Paul Hughes has huge upside and how, I think they're a little bit on the Dagestan hater train. And so they're like, Hughes has a huge upside and he's so much better and he's 27. But let's think about this. Usman Nurmagomedov is 26, right? So let's put that into comparison. 26, 27, pretty much the same age. They're both young, right? Usman has more experience. Paul Hughes has a little bit less. But, Hughes he's a dog for sure. So as they get better, they're both going to get better, right? And I feel like they're going to fight 3 times. That's what I feel like, because it's a good matchup. It's a solid matchup, and I feel like there's going to be a trilogy. I feel like Paul's going to win the next one. I feel like they're going to go out the third one. I saw an interview with Paul Hughes and Ariel this morning. I saw it this morning. I don't know when it happened, but essentially was saying that he would love to do the second fight, the rematch in Belfast, but he's probably sure that it's going to be in the Middle East. But he thinks that the trilogy fight, because he's assuming he's going to win, he thinks the trilogy fight will be in Belfast, which would be massive. But I think it's going to be a good matchup. I think it's going to be a good rivalry. We'll get some time out of it. I think they're trying to make it fast, but I don't know if Usman's all about it. I think he was a little worried. He said that he took him lightly. But anyway, that was a good matchup. PFL did it. Bare Knuckle did it. So I'm going to start watching them. They sold me on it. Let's go. Hopefully they keep doing good fight cards, and we kind of go. They do definitely less fight cards than the UFC. But yeah, so that's that. Still talking about Conor, right? So Conor was also kind of tweeting that he wanted to fight the Paul brothers, right? There's a video. Obviously, they were going to, I believe it might have been the Trump inauguration, and they were talking about, they were in the bus, and he was like, "Oh, I'll fight you guys, whatever." Get out of here, bro. Like, you're not fighting nobody. You're not gonna fight at all. He's doing everything for clout. You see the face-offs at the BKFC. It's like he was acting like he was the one facing off. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I don't even think we'll ever see Conor fight again, to be quite honest with you, man. He's when anyone brings up, oh, is Conor going to fight this guy? I'm like, move it to the side, bro. He's not. I know he's not, right? And if he does, we'll take it there. But, if he fights again, 90% chance he just loses, to be honest with you. So that's that. So let's move on from that, right? Okay, I got this right here. This is an interesting one. Jake Paul, okay? There's been a lot of rumors about Jake Paul fighting somebody, a big name. He tries to only fight big names to make big money, right? I got this take on him, man, where I think that Jake Paul should be sued. Now let me tell you why. Okay, let me go back to this Mike Tyson fight. So, going into the Mike Tyson fight, again, this was last year, dude. I'm sorry for going back, but I want to bring it up because I haven't had a chance to kind of express my point of view on this. So, going back to that Mike Tyson fight, right? The build up for the fight, he kept saying, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to, all this stuff. I'm going to put him down, legend down, all this stuff, right? So you were able to bet on this fight, right? You could bet on the knockout. You could bet on a draw. You could bet on all the stuff that you could with a normal fight. So it was a fight, right? It was a fight. In our minds, it was a fight. Yes. And so most people were like, oh, I bet that, Paul's going to knock him out. I think Mike Tyson's going to knock him out. All this stuff. There was money being thrown around and betted on, right? And we saw the fight. After the fight, they asked him, oh, were you carrying him? And he says, yeah, I was carrying him for the last rounds. He's a legend. I got respect for him, essentially saying that he didn't knock him out when he could have knocked him out, right? Which is fine. It is what it is. That's his choice, whatever. He said it, though, right? Well, let's think about that. Let's say I would never do this, but let's say I bet my whole life earnings on the fact that Jake Paul's going to knock out Mike Tyson, because leading up to this fight, he said, I'm going to knock him out. I'm taking this serious. I'm going to, whatever. He's leaving in a stretcher, all this stuff, right? And then this happens. It ends up being a decision for Paul. And then post-fight conference, he's saying, oh, I carried him. Well, what? If you could have knocked him out, then you should have knocked him out, because now guess what? I lost all the money I bet on that. And that's ridiculous. That's not fair. And that's a little bit of fraud in my eyes, right? Now you could say, oh, well, maybe he didn't. He's just saying that he carried him or whatever. It was pretty obvious that he could have knocked him out or could have tried harder. And he literally, if you ask 100 people, 100 people will say he carried him, right? And so I don't take any Jake Paul fight serious at all. And I'll never watch it. I'll never watch a Jake Paul fight. I just watched that one just because it was on Netflix and I had Netflix. I will never pay for a Jake Paul fight. I think it's ridiculous. And anyway, that's where I stand on that, bro. You can take it how you want, but that's where I stand on that. The kind of last thing I had to talk about was I've been really going hard on posting on our social, posting on our YouTube, right? So if you're looking at our YouTube, it's the Fight Club Podcast. If you're looking at the Instagram, it's the Fight Club Podcast, but there's an underscore between every single word. So if you want to find us on there. You can comment. You can hopefully subscribe and share, please. If you want to email us, it's fightclubpodcast2024@gmail.com. And we'll respond, right? I'll respond to you guys. And so I had actually someone comment on a short that I had put up and a reel that I had put up, which were the same things. They were actually the same little clips. Someone commented on both, different people. Someone commented on YouTube saying that, well, essentially they were both saying the same thing. Saying, because I talked about the last podcast, I talked about how Robert Whittaker was talking about moving up to 205, right? And I talked about kind of how Yuri was a smaller light heavyweight, and I said this was the rumor. This was what people were saying, right? Not that I agreed on it. This is what people were saying. So these two guys, different guys, were commenting, essentially said the same thing. So essentially said that Robert Whittaker would get smashed at 205, because he got worked by DDP, and that's just, he said, are you joking? Right? And the other guy kind of said the same thing, not so aggressive as, are you joking? Right? So I responded to both of them and I said, bro, I'm just saying what the rumor was. The rumor was that Robert Whittaker said he was going to move up to 205. Yuri actually said he was going to move down to 185. And so, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just saying that, right? So let's talk about numbers here. Okay? Let's talk about stats. Let's talk about sizes. Okay? So I kind of looked into this a little bit. And I looked and I saw that Robert Whittaker, he says that he walks around about 220 pounds. He cuts down to 185. Okay? It's 35-pound cut. A 35-pound weight loss, you can say, I guess, for fight time. Now you're looking at someone like Yuri. They say he probably walks around about 220 also, same size. He cuts down to 205, right? That's 15 pounds. Now Yuri's taller. He's about 6 foot, right? Robert Whittaker's a little shorter, a lot shorter. He's 5'9", I think 5'9", 5'10", something like that. Okay, so yes, you can say that there is a size difference, height-wise, right? But let's look at this. What about someone like Khalil Roundtree? Khalil Roundtree, he's 6'1", but he walks around about, I think it said he walks around about 208. So he doesn't really cut much weight to make weight, right? And he was a middleweight and he didn't do very, very much at middleweight, so he moved up to light heavyweight. And we just saw him go against Poatan, and obviously he didn't do incredible, but he was surprising. He did decent. He got knocked out like everybody else does, but you're fighting Poatan, you're fighting Jama. That's what's gonna happen, man. So, I was just talking about essentially thinking about the fact that, okay, you have somebody like Khalil Roundtree who moved up to light heavyweight from middleweight, okay? So he's essentially a little bit of a smaller guy. He's not a natural light heavyweight, right? He was a middleweight. But then you have, someone who, like Robert Whittaker, who's thinking, talked about moving up. Yeah, these two people, why don't you put them together, right? Robert Whittaker, he's not going to be a champion. Right, that he's just not. He can be in the top 5, but he's not going to be a champion. So I think he's flirting with the idea of moving up. Now Yuri was flirting with the idea with moving down. At least that's what he said, right? And he's a smaller guy, right? And so for the division, and so he was contemplating, or at least said it, whether he really thought about it or not, to move down. Now, the Yuri that fought, if I'm thinking about this, the Yuri that fought Rakic, the Yuri that fought Poatan, I think that would be a pretty even fight against Robert Whittaker, who, think about this though, who weighs 220, who doesn't have to cut 35 pounds, who only has to cut 15 pounds. That's the difference, right? Because you can't tell me that cutting less weight isn't going to make a difference, right? If I have to cut 15 instead of 35 pounds, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to have more condition. I'm going to hit harder, right? I'm going to be more active. I'm just going to be able to think better. I'm going to be able to respond better. My reflexes are going to be better, right? It's a huge difference, dude. A huge difference, right? That's less than half of the cut that he'd have to normally do. So I think that sometimes we take into consideration like how they fight, but we don't take into consideration the fact that the cutting of the weight's different, right? The cutting of the weight makes a huge difference. And so, I think it's smart. I think it's smart to think about those things. And I think it's smart to understand that, just because two people are in different weight classes doesn't mean they can't fight each other. Doesn't mean the smaller guy can't go up and do some good things, right? Also, you have someone like Izzy. He moved up and fight Jan, right? He lost, yes, don't get me wrong, right? But, whatever. He got laid on. He got wrestled out, but he didn't get smoked. Right, he didn't get smoked, and Drickus, my God, you know what? He's probably a couple fights away from moving up to light heavyweight anyway. So essentially, he was already fighting a light heavyweight. I'm talking about Robert Whittaker, but anyways, so that's I'm kind of on a little rant there, but that was the point of that post, was just that I was just talking about a rumor, right? But weight cuts are different. Weight cuts make a difference, and it's important to understand that. Fights are totally different depending on weight cuts. You can just tell, right? You look at Max cutting to 145, and then Max working and fighting at 155. That's a huge difference, and that's 10 pounds. So anyway, that's my take on that. But moving on, this weekend we have Izzy. This is going to be a fight night. So this is Izzy, I think they said 6 or 7 years. In the last 6 or 7 years, this is his first non-title fight, which is pretty freaking nuts. But he's fighting Imavov, and so it looks like it's going to be a solid fight. It's going to be it's in Saudi Arabia, so it's going to be at 12 o'clock Eastern. And so, it's going to be an early day, which is fine because, when I'm working, I'm able to rent the fights and watch the fights a little earlier. So it works out for me a little bit, honestly. Then you got the Bullet's going to fight MVP. So that's going to be an interesting fight. Obviously, I think the Bullet's going to win. Now, my brother told me, and Raul had told me, that there's this kind of thing that whenever there's a fight card, at least UFC-wise, in the Middle East, the fighters with the last name and the last letter that ends in V usually win. So we're gonna put that test to the we're gonna put that science to the test here. So if that's the case, then you have Imavov's gonna win. If that's the case, you're gonna have the Bullet's gonna win, and then Said Nurmagomedov's gonna win, and then Mohamed Namov is gonna win. I probably said that wrong. Shamil Gaziev is gonna win. And that's it right there. So let's see. Let's put that logic to the test, or let's put that that I don't know. I guess that rumor to the test and see if that's true or not. So I'm excited for that, and I think that we have. Oh, perfect. The week after we have DDP against Strickland, so that's gonna be a solid ass fight, and that's gonna be a regular 10 p.m. Main card fight. So I'm excited for that, and yeah. So that's what I have for you guys. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys, sticking through. I'm really excited about episode 6. I'm really excited about having a little setup here. I'm in my son's room. He's right here. Look, he's a Las Vegas Raider fan. I'm not. I'm a Chicago Bears fan, but this is the best room to do this podcast in. I'm looking and seeing if I can find somewhere else to do it that maybe is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and I can make it more mine. But we make it work when we can make it work. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you guys want to email us, fightclubpodcast2024@gmail.com, the Fight Club Podcast at YouTube, and then also the Fight Club Podcast with underscores between the words at Instagram. So please comment, please subscribe and share, support your boy. And yeah, so we'll see you guys on the next one. Episode 7 will be right around the corner. Peace.